Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Judges, the first chapter, as we continue from within the period of the conquest and the era of the judges. Having gone through the book of Joshua, we see how Israel, being led by Joshua, began to take over the land of Canaan, and how the lots were cast for the various tribes to go and possess the land. So this is the book of Judges, chapter 1, verse 1. Now after the death of Joshua, it came to pass that the children of Israel asked the Lord Yahweh, saying, Who shall go up for us against the Canaanites first, to fight against them? And here they were asking of the tribes, which tribe was to go first, against the Canaanites to go and claim that land. And the Lord Yahweh said, Judah shall go up. Behold, I have delivered the land into his hand. And Judah said unto Simeon his brother, Come up with me into my lot, that we may fight against the Canaanites. Now, keep in mind, though it says, it uses the pronouns as though, Judah and Simeon are talking about one person, but this is actually talking about the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Simeon. And I likewise will go with thee into thy lot. So Simeon went with him. So those of the tribe of Simeon, right, the men of war, went along with the men of Judah to go and fight against the Canaanites, to claim the lot or the territory that was portioned for Judah. And in return, Judah would go with Simeon to claim their lot. And Judah went up, and the Lord Yahweh delivered the Canaanites and the Perizzites into their hand. And they slew of them in Bezek 10,000 men. And they found Adonai-Bezek in Bezek, and they fought against him, which I believe that in the Hebrews, Adawanya Bezek, or Bazak, which is, my Lord is Bezek. And they fought against him, and they slew the Canaanites and the Perizzites. But Adonai-Bezek fled, and they pursued after him, and caught him, and cut off his thumbs and his great toes. Sheesh. And Adonai-Bezek said, 70 kings, that's 70 kings, having their thumbs and their great toes cut off, gathered their meat under my table. And this is him basically saying, in his, because he was a king, right, or a leader, more than likely, but having been in the role he was in, right, in past times, he had conquered different nations and recounted how he cut off their great toes and their thumbs, and basically made them subservient unto him, right? As he says, they gathered their meat under my table, as I have done. And that's like saying eating the scraps from under my table. And that's what he did. So God hath requited me, or paid me back. And they brought him to Jerusalem, and there he died. Now the children of Judah had fought against Jerusalem, and had taken it, and smitten it with the edge of the sword, and set the city on fire. Now it's important to keep in mind here that though at this time the children of Judah did fight against Jerusalem, right? They won, let's just say, the battle, but they didn't conquer that Jerusalem, right? To the point where when you go fast forward into the time of Samuel, into the time of David, that's why Jerusalem was still under the control of the Jebusites, because though they fought against it, they didn't necessarily take it over. So it remained in the dominion or the hands of the Jebusites. And afterward, the children of Judah went down to fight against the Canaanites that dwelt in the mountain and in the south and in the valley. And Judah went against the Canaanites that dwelt in Hebron. Now the name of Hebron before was Kirjath Arba. And they slew Shishai and Ahiman and Talmai. And from thence he went against the inhabitants of Debir. And the name of Debir before was Kirjath Sepher. And Caleb said, He that smiteth Kirjath Sepher, and taketh it, to him will I give Achsah my daughter to wife. And Othniel the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, took it, and he gave him Achsah his daughter to wife. And it came to pass, when she came to him, that she moved him to ask of her father a field. And she lighted off from her ass, and Caleb said unto her, What wilt thou? Now, what's interesting about this verse here is that most of the translations have it as such, but I did notice in the NLT, there's a footnote here where it mentions that she urged him to ask her father for a field. And it says here, the Greek version and the Latin Vulgate read, he urged her, right? And in that case, it would read as though when Achsah married Othniel, he urged her to ask of her father a field. And so, as it says, as she was getting off her donkey, Caleb asked her, what is the matter, right? Or what does she want? And she basically said she wanted, basically more land. So that would be one way of reading that based on this footnote here. But the general translation has it that she urged him to move her father to ask for a field. Either way, somebody asked for a field, and either way, that request was fulfilled. All right. Verse 15, and she said unto him, Achsah saying unto her father, Caleb, that is, give me a blessing, for thou hast given me a south land, give me also springs of water. And Caleb, because springs of water were very important, right? Especially in like a mountainous region, or even just where they were. Water was very, very essential for crops, for pretty much anything. So being in that area with springs was very, very beneficial or valuable. And Caleb gave her the upper springs and the nether springs, nether being the lower. And the children of the Kenite, Moses' father-in-law, went up out of the city of palm trees with the children of Judah into the wilderness of Judah. And you notice that when we read in the book of Jeremiah, they mentioned, right, when they actually came up to Jerusalem, the descendants of Jethro, when they came up to Jerusalem, they mentioned that they used to dwell in the wilderness of Judah, but due to the siege and the attack of the Babylonians, it caused them to migrate inwards to, for safety. So this is going to show you how they ended up over there in the wilderness of Judah, which lieth in the south of Arad. And they went and dwelt among the people. And Judah went with Simeon his brother, and they slew the Canaanites that inhabited Zephath, and utterly destroyed it. And the name of the city was called Hormah. Also Judah took Gaza with the coast thereof, and Ashkelon with the coast thereof, and Ekron with the coast thereof. And that's that same region, right? It's still known as Gaza today. They call it the Gaza Strip. And the Lord Yahweh was with Judah, and he drave out the inhabitants of the mountain, but could not drive out the inhabitants of the valley. So the lowlands or the plains area, they weren't able to drive them out because they had chariots of iron. Okay, and let's go into that right there. But that would make it difficult to fight against them, as their chariot wheels, I believe. Yeah, chariots. Yeah. So their chariot wheels being made of iron were stronger, right, than just like wood cart wheels looking. And more than likely, it might have not just been their chariot wheel, maybe their spears as well. If they can make their chariot wheels of iron, then they can utilize that iron for other things as well. And they gave Hebron unto Caleb, as Moses said, and he expelled thence the 3 sons of Anak. And the children of Benjamin did not drive out the Jebusites that inhabited Jerusalem. See? But the Jebusites dwell with the children of Benjamin in Jerusalem on to this day. And what's interesting about this is, based on this, whoever the author is, right, that's writing this here, the scribe or the recorder, it sounds almost as though this was written prior to David taking over or conquering the Jerusalem, right? Because till this day would be the present day of when this was written. But we know that after David's reign, he had taken it over, and it was now called um, the city of David, right? But just an interesting thought. Anyway, we know that through the process of um, transcribing and rewriting to preserve text, obviously, you have different writers, different scribes that transfer the text over and over and over again to preserve it. Either way, verse 22. And the house of Joseph, they also went up against Bethel, and the Lord Yahweh was with them. And the house of Joseph, so the house of Joseph would be who? Manasseh and Ephraim, right? They formed the house of Joseph. Now you had half the tribe of Manasseh that was across the Jordan on the east, but you also had half that was on the west of the Jordan. And the house of Joseph sent to describe Bethel. When you go into the word describe, means to seek out or to search. In this case, to spy out the land, you could say. Now the name of the city before was Luz. And the spies saw a man come forth out of the city. And they said unto him, Shew us, we pray thee, the entrance into the city, and we will shew thee mercy. And when he shewed them the entrance into the city, they smote the city with the edge of the sword. But they let the man go, and all his family. And the man went into the land of the Hittites, and built a city, and called the name thereof Luz, which is the name thereof unto this day. Neither did Manasseh drive out the inhabitants of Bethshean and her towns, nor Tanakh and her towns, nor the inhabitants of Dor and her towns, nor the inhabitants of Ibleam and her towns, nor the inhabitants of Megiddo and her towns, but the Canaanites would dwell in that land. And so this goes to show that, and the Lord said that he would do this, to leave some of them in the land as a thorn in the side of Israel if they didn't follow his ways. So they weren't able to drive them all out. And it came to pass when Israel was strong that they put the Canaanites to tribute and did not utterly drive them out. So when they had the upper hand, they subjected them to be tributaries onto them rather than to kick them out completely. Neither did Ephraim drive out the Canaanites that dwelt in Gezer, but the Canaanites dwelt in Gezer among them. Neither did Zebulun drive out the inhabitants of Kitron, nor the inhabitants of Nahalol, but the Canaanites dwelt among them and became tributaries. Neither did Asher drive out the inhabitants of Akko, nor the inhabitants of Zidon, nor of Alab, nor of Akzib, nor of Helba, nor of Aphik, nor of Rehob. But the Asherites dwelt among the Canaanites and the inhabitants of the land, for they did not drive them out. So you're seeing there's a good number of tribes here that so far were not able to drive out all the Canaanites from the land. Neither did Naphtali drive out the inhabitants of Beth Shemesh, nor the inhabitants of Bethanath, but he dwelt among the Canaanites and the inhabitants of the land. Nevertheless, the inhabitants of Beth Shemesh and of Bethanath became tributaries unto them. And we'll see how this eventually becomes a snare onto the tribes, as dwelling among these heathens leads to, them being influenced ultimately by them, and then leading into that cycle of more disobedience. And the Amorites forced the children of Dan into the mountain, for they would not suffer them to come down to the valley. So they basically, let me read this in the NLT, but it says, as for the tribe of Dan, the Amorites forced them back into the hill country and would not let them come down into the plains. But the Amorites would dwell in Heres, in Aijalon, and in Shaalbim. Yet the hand of the house of Joseph prevailed, so that they became tributaries. So they weren't driven out from these areas, but going against the house of Joseph, the house of Joseph was stronger, right? And therefore, in conquering them or taking them over, they made them tributaries or subject unto them. The problem with this, though, is that just like, what Pharaoh feared concerning the Israelites who were slaves in Egypt was that if something happened, right, that would weaken the hands of Israel, these same tributaries could then rise up against them. Okay, they would just need the right circumstance and they would be able to rise up and take over again. And we see that eventually, once again, leading into the time of Samuel and Saul, we ended up having so many wars with these with the Philistines and the Amorites, and the the nations and the land. And the coast of the Amorites was from the going up of Akrabim, from the rock and upward. And that brings us to the end of the book of Judges, the first chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Rakha Kodesh. And until next time, Shalom.